Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to build a blueprint. We're going to map out the complete official structure of the government of Pakistan, right from the very top all the way down. And where better to start than with the foundation itself? This one line, right from Pakistan's constitution, basically defines the entire power structure. It sets up a federal government and, crucially, names the prime minister as the chief executive. Seriously, this one sentence is the key to understanding everything else that follows.
So, here's our game plan for breaking this all down. We're going to start with the main governing blueprint, then look at the three big branches of power, settle that classic prime minister versus president question, see how power flows from the federal level down to the local, and finally, connect it all to what it actually means in daily life. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the governing blueprint. So, what is the fundamental design of the Pakistani state? How is this whole thing actually put together on paper? Okay, so at its very core, Pakistan is a federal republic. And this is a really crucial concept. It means you don't just have one single center of power. Instead, all that authority is constitutionally shared between a central national government in the capital and the governments of its individual provinces. Now, this system didn't just pop up overnight, It's actually the result of decades of evolution. The first constitution back in '56 set the stage, but then there was a huge pivot in 1962 toward a more presidential system. Then, fast forward to 1973, and the country switched back to the parliamentary system that, with a few key changes along the way, really forms the basis of the government we see today. So, how is this government actually structured? Well, like a lot of modern democracies, it isn't just one big block of power. It's built on three distinct pillars. It's that classic separation of powers idea, designed to create a system of checks and balances. This is a fantastic way to think about it. Just picture the government as this big, complex machine. The legislative branch, they're the engineers. They design the rules by making the laws. The executive branch is the operations crew. They're the ones running the machine day in and day out, enforcing those laws. And the judicial branch? They act as quality control, making sure everything is running according to the instruction manual, which, of course, is the Constitution. So let's dig into Pillar 1, the legislature, which you probably know as Parliament. It's bicameral, which is just a fancy way of saying it has two houses. You've got the Senate, the upper house, which represents the provinces, but the real center of gravity is the National Assembly, the lower house, whose members are directly elected by you, the people, and their main job, to debate and pass the laws of the land. All right, next up is the executive branch. This is the government in action, the get stuff done part. It's led by the prime minister, who picks a cabinet of ministers to oversee all the different departments, finance, defense, health, the whole shebang. Their job, together, is to take the laws that Parliament passes and actually make them happen, managing the entire administration of the country. And finally, we have the judicial branch. The key thing here is that this pillar is designed to be totally independent of the other two. At the very top, you have the Supreme Court of Pakistan, with a whole system of high courts and lower courts underneath it. Its most important role is to interpret the law and the Constitution, basically serving as the ultimate referee to make sure everything is being done by the book. So this brings us to a really critical question. In this whole structure, who's actually in the driver's seat? To figure that out, we've got to look at the two most powerful titles in the state, the prime minister and the president. Okay, here's how these roles are supposed to be clearly separated. The prime minister is the chief executive, the head of government. They're the one actually running the federal administration day to day. The president, on the other hand, is the ceremonial head of state. So even though the president has the title of commander-in-chief, they pretty much always act on the binding advice of the prime minister. Now, you've got to understand, this balance of power wasn't always so clear-cut. There was this huge landmark change back in 2010 called the 18th Amendment. It was specifically designed to shift power away from the presidency and lock it in firmly with the elected prime minister. It was a massive move to reinforce the country's parliamentary system. Okay, so we've got this big federal structure sitting in the capital. But how does that power actually flow out to the hundreds of millions of people all across the country? Let's trace the power grid, so to speak. You can see the hierarchy pretty clearly right here. At the very top, you've got the federal government. Power then flows down to the 4 provincial governments. And then, beneath them, you have local governments that are responsible for running districts and cities. Each of these levels has its own distinct job to do.
let's get into the specifics of who does what. The federal level, led by the PM, they handle the big-ticket items. We're talking national defense, foreign policy, things like that. Then, the provincial governments, led by their own chief ministers, manage the stuff that affects daily life a lot more directly, like our schools, hospitals, and local police. And finally, at the local level, it's all about the absolute essentials: sanitation, city management, and other local services.
Okay, let's bring this all down to earth and make it even more practical. We've seen the blueprint, we've traced the power grid, but how does this entire machine actually connect with you, the average citizen, on a daily basis?
Well, let's start with the sheer scale of this operation. The federal government is working with an annual budget of around 17.5 trillion rupees. That's the fuel that powers the entire national machine, funding everything from major highways to local hospitals. And that massive pile of cash, it gets distributed across more than 30 federal ministries. But these four you see here, finance, interior, defense, and foreign affairs, they are absolute heavyweights. These ministries shape everything from the country's economy and internal security to its national defense and how it deals with the rest of the world.
And this is where it becomes totally real for most people. When you apply for a passport, or get your national ID card from NADRA, or deal with federal taxes, yep, that's you interacting directly with the federal government's machinery. These are the tangible ways we all connect with the system. So what's the engine that keeps all of this running, year after year, through different elections and different governments? That would be the civil service. Think of them as the permanent bureaucracy of Pakistan, the professional administrators and officials whose job it is to actually implement policy and deliver public services. They are the continuity, no matter which political party is in power. So there you have it, the official blueprint for a federal republic, with 3 branches of power, a parliamentary system led by a prime minister, and a multi-tiered structure for governing. It's a really complex design on paper, full of all these checks and balances. But this leaves us with the ultimate question. How does this official blueprint translate into the day-to-day reality of governing a nation of over 240 million people? Well, that's the real story. Thanks for watching.